Hi everyone, it's Lauren and these are all of the reviews for the books that I've read in the second part of July. If you'd like to see my part 1 of my July wrap up, I will leave the video linked in the corner here and the description box below. And as always, all of the books that I mentioned will also be linked below if you want to go check those out. So the first book that I read, the first book I want to mention very quickly is Macbeth by William Shakespeare, and I read this because this is going to be the next play that I do a video on as part of my Shakespeare series, where I kind of analyse each of his plays, slowly working my way through, and this was highly requested, so Macbeth is going to be the next one on the list. I don't think I've read Macbeth since I was at school, so it was quite interesting to read it again. I'm not sure that it is my favourite play to read. On reflection, I think I probably prefer to see this performed, but it was really interesting to read it again, and I noticed so many kind of themes. There's a lot of stuff that I'm going to be able to talk about in my video, so that's going to be really interesting. So the next book I read was Slaughterhouse-Five by Kurt Vonnegut. This is my first Kurt Vonnegut, and this is part of my little crusade to read some old school science fiction, which was lent to me by my friend Kate. This was completely unlike what I thought it was going to be. I think for some reason I thought I was going to be reading like Battle Royale or something. Slaughterhouse-Five is not like that. I think it's just got that kind of name, and I'd always presumed it was some kind of, I don't know, like something like Saw. It's actually much more of an anti-war novel disguised as a science fiction novel, really. This is the story of the life of Billy Pilgrim, who is at one point in his life a prisoner of war in Germany during World War II and witnesses the bombing of Dresden. However, it's actually a look at his entire life, and you jump in time between his life before World War II and his life afterwards. And part of the technique in this book is to say that Billy Pilgrim has been abducted by aliens and therefore flashes back in time. So it's quite kooky. It's a very interesting technique, and at first I was a bit like, what am I reading? But it's actually quite funny, and I quite enjoyed that. And a lot of the concepts in this book are about how people's lives sort of exist in one go. So if someone's dead, they're still alive somewhere in the past, and using this technique of jumping between Billy's life, it really felt like that. You were looking at his life in one big go. It's such a specific writing style, and I can't imagine that there's many other people writing novels in this way, and at first it did throw me a little bit, but now that I've got into his way of writing, I'd be really interested to read some more stuff by him. Next we have Such Small Hands by Andrés Barba, which has just been translated from Spanish, and this is quite an interesting little novella. It's about a little girl called Marina whose parents die in a car crash, and then she's sent to a boarding school with lots of other girls, and I guess her age is kind of pre-pubescent, maybe between 8, 9 and 10. And what happens in this book is that we get Marina as a character, and we get a kind of third person look at her, and then we get chapters from the other girls in the school's perspective, but they are almost like one conglomerate being, really, and it's kind of her and everybody else, and the different characters of the girls get merged into one big thing. And themes that this book deals with, in my opinion, is kind of growing up, being that prepubescent time where you're not quite done with playing, but you're getting a little bit more self-aware, and it's that line between loving someone and being interested in someone, and then being jealous of them and hating them, and where those lines are in life. It's a very interesting look at that time of childhood, which I think rings very true when you're kind of learning a little bit more about your world and your life, but those experiences aren't quite sexual yet, and it's kind of quite dark in terms of what can go wrong. I very much enjoyed the themes of this book. I think the writing style was a little bit bare and a little bit simple for my personal taste. That could be because of what Spanish is like as a language and how sentences are constructed in Spanish. It could be because of the translation. It could just be style, and it could just not be for me. Next, I read a crime novel, a mystery book. I never really read books like this, but this was a pick for my book club that I've started with my friends. This is what we had to read for the month of July, and we haven't had our chat about it yet. We're having that tomorrow, so that will be interesting. And what we read was The Dry by Jane Harper. Now, this was advertised as one of 2017's best crime novels ever, which is why it got picked for the group. I don't know that I really loved it, but that could just be because I don't really read crime fiction that much. The story focuses on Aaron Felk, who is a policeman in Australia, and he has to go back to his hometown after his childhood best friend Luke is found with his brains blown out and his wife and child, and it looks like he's killed his family and then killed himself. At the funeral, Falk is asked by Luke's parents, can you investigate this please, because we don't feel like, this just doesn't seem right. And then what's happened with Luke is also tied back with some secrets and things that happened between Falk and Luke when they were teenagers the last time he was there, and it's a very small town, suspicions, different personalities and secrets, and it's kind of linking what happened in the past with with this tragedy that's happened today. Story-wise, that's fine. I thought it was okay. The problem is I found myself reading the book just because I wanted to know what had happened. I just wanted to get to the end. I wasn't really enjoying the book as such. The characters, I felt there was a lot of telling you about their characters and not a lot of showing you. It just felt very tropey to me. It felt like it could be any crime drama that I've ever seen on television. Didn't feel like it was bringing anything new. So I don't know, it was fine, but as someone who doesn't read a lot of that genre, I don't know how it ranks compared to other books of that type. I think the only book that's similar that I've read is The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, which I did really like, and I enjoyed that book, and this was just... And finally, another tricky book, I'm afraid, which is My Cousin Rachel by Daphne du Maurier. Now, I am not a great lover of Daphne du Maurier. I thought Rebecca was okay, but I read it a long time ago, so I would like to read that again. I didn't enjoy Jamaica Inn when I read that a few months ago, and so Simon at Savage Reads gave me a copy of My Cousin Rachel because, you know, him and some other people really enjoy Daphne du Maurier, and she's like, she's got so much hype on BookTube at the moment, and I just didn't really get it. So I have read My Cousin Rachel, and I still feel quite torn, really. This is from the perspective of a young man called Philip who, when he was a child, was taken in by his cousin Ambrose, and they lived together, just men, in this big Saley home. Ambrose then goes on a trip to Italy and meets the beautiful Rachel, who he promptly marries, and then within 2 years Ambrose is dead. Rachel then comes to, well, she's invited to the house by Philip, and it's kind of about who Rachel is really, what really happened between her and Ambrose in Italy, what her motivations are, and it's Philip discovering that for himself. When I first started reading it, I thought, yes, I'm really enjoying this writing and I'm getting into it, and maybe this will be the du Maurier for me. But as it went on, I think I found the same problems that I found with some of her other works. So it's not bad, it wasn't unenjoyable. I did feel like the pace of the book was a little bit off, and I felt the same in Jamaica Inn. I feel like there's a big section in the middle where almost nothing's happening, and it's just, you get lines like, oh, and then in the morning we had breakfast and I spoke to Rachel, and then we went downstairs and then we went for a walk, and then late, and it was just kind of going on and on about their daily routine, and that's what Jamaica Inn was like. And then at the end there was so much plot, and it felt a bit clumsy and it felt a bit contrived, and I didn't feel like anything built, like the atmosphere didn't build properly. And the other issue I had with this book, which isn't too bad in this book in and of itself, but in context with Jamaica Inn and Rebecca, I just feel like Daphne du Maurier writes women really weirdly, or she doesn't seem to really like women at all. And it's difficult to know if I'm reading too much into it in this book specifically, because the point of it is that Philip doesn't really know that many women, and he's unused to having a woman in his life, as is Ambrose. So part of it is the sexual chemistry between men and women, and that's the whole point of the book in one sense. I think for me there's just an element of style over substance, and I just don't feel like it really gets, it's like there's a lot of promise in her writing, and I don't feel like it's ever quite finished enough for me. So yeah, I think I've given it a good go. That's 3 du Mauriers I've read now, and I just thought they were all okay. So I think we're good on my opinion on du Maurier. I don't think we need to like flog this donkey anymore. So I would love to hear your opinion on any of these books if you've read them. I would love to hear what you've been reading in July. Like I said, I'm going to be going on holiday later in August, so I'm sure I will get a whole ton of reading done then, and I will see you in my next video. Bye!